It's a pleasure to welcome you here today to a discussion with some wonderful individuals about your hotel-wide commitment to safety and security. My name is Louise Rubel. I'm a 22-year hotel veteran with IHG, and then I now work with the Hotel Association, and proudly I manage the Safety and Security Committee. It's been a great honor, and I've learned a lot, and I think you'll learn a lot here today too. One thing I want to note before we get started with our discussion is that there are going to be a lot of suggestions and ideas that we're going to discuss today. We just want to make sure that you realize that they're not applicable to all hotels. Safety and security is a very individualized thing, and you need to make sure that you're adhering to your brand and your third-party management company rules, training obligations, and such as it comes to safety and security. So with that, I'm going to let my esteemed panelists introduce themselves. Mr. Ring.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Ring. I've been in the hospitality industry for 30 plus years. I spent 18 years at Wyndham. Actually started in the operations side, even obtained my CHA before I made a shift over to the safety security side. Currently work for Aimbridge Hospitality and also serve as the co-chair of the AHLA Safety Security Committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sherri Foster. I am the Director of Safety and Security for Extended Stay America. I am the rookie of the group because I've only been doing this 3.5 years. My background is law enforcement, local, state, and federal. But I'm glad to be here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ross Bartlett, General Manager of the Amway Grand Plaza Hotel, Curio Collection property in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's quite the hotel, 656 guest rooms, 40,000 square feet of meeting space, 9 restaurants. So we do have our fair share of safety and security, processes and programs in place, but excited to be here. So thank you.
All right, well, let's get this really interesting conversation started because we're going to hit on a lot of angles around safety and security that maybe you have or haven't thought about in your hotels. So I want to start with relationships. You know, relationships are part of hospitality, right? We have relationships with our team members, with our guests, but also relationships are critical when it comes to safety and security. Sherri, I want to start with you and talk about, how do people, being a past law enforcement person, talk about how hotels and relationships with law enforcement are critical to hotel operations.
Well, this is one of the things that we teach is that you have to have a relationship with your local law enforcement, and you don't need to develop that relationship when a crisis is at hand, right? So nurture that relationship, develop it before. I tell our GMs that you should know who your local chief of police is, and you should have the name of a detective or an officer in your phone so that you can call. And it's not just when something happens that you're calling the police, but if you see something that you're suspicious about and you're just not that sure and you can't contact your boss or whoever, you might could call that detective and say, hey, can I run this by you and let me, tell me if you think I'm crazy or whatever. So I think that the relationship with the local law enforcement is so important and vital in this day and time.
Tim, do you want to
Sure.
for that?
Wholeheartedly agree. I think there's a lot that hotels can do today in fostering relationships. I know a hotel years ago they would take a meeting room in their hotel, and once a month they would allow the local police union to meet in their hotel. So the union would come in because they can't meet in police headquarters, but all the police officers got to know that hotel. They move them around each month to a different meeting room, give them a complimentary meeting room, but yet those police officers got to know that hotel inside and out, that if something happened when they responded to the hotel, they knew exactly where they were going and what the situation was in the hotel. I wholeheartedly agree. I think relationships are absolutely critical. You don't want to be meeting people when you have a crisis in your hotel.
And Ross, you're on the ground, and I know that you have fostered some relationships. Tell us about how you've done that and maybe some of the anecdotes that have come from having that relationship with your local folks.
Sure. Just piggybacking on what they both said. Of course, you don't want to meet police or fire or any of that nature when crisis hits. But, just developing simple strategies such as, pop with a cop was kind of a term that we use where you invite, obviously, your neighbors. And I know not all hotels have neighbors per se right next door, but you have a community, right? And so gathering together with everyone, with local law enforcement to talk a little bit about what's happening, what's going on, as well as putting faces with names. It's a tried and true thing in our industry where you tend to do more with those that you know and trust, and that comes with a relationship with law enforcement as well. So your team starts to get more comfortable with, the faces and the names, and then to Tim's point, the law enforcement gets more comfortable with your building, whether it's, a limited service or a full service or a resort. These are complex buildings with lots of different areas that require a lot of attention to detail and a lot of ground to cover. So, yeah.
And if I could just add to that too, it doesn't stop just at law enforcement. Think about inviting the local fire department out when you're doing a fire drill so they can see how you evacuate your hotel, where people go. Think about inviting your local ambulance to come out and try to put their stretcher in your elevator and see if that works. It's not just law enforcement, it's emergency services overall.
I think all of that is so critical. And so you've built the relationship, right? You have these great people that are coming to your hotels for pop with a cop and those kinds of things. Let's talk about the team aspect of this. So you have these relationships. How do you get your team to buy in? And what kind of a culture do you need to foster to make this work at hotels? Ross, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. We always preach safety and security is paramount, both for our associates and our guests, but we have to live it every day. And so, as a GM or a senior leader in the hotel, you have to set the expectation and the tone from day one. And so that starts with our orientation for our team members. Day one, they're exposed obviously to our expectations, our policies, our procedures. We like to obviously get them through all of the required training before they hit the ground. But it's just a continuation. If I'm not living and breathing the safety and security expectations of the general manager, how can I expect the staff to? So it's building a culture of awareness and education, but really leaning into, just furthermore is the awareness component. So leaning into the staff, like your doormen, your doorwomen that obviously have eyes on every single person that comes into the hotel, your front desk, they have eyes and ears, your housekeeping, your room attendants. These are resources that can contribute to, obviously, if they see something, they say something. And it's incredibly important that you create a culture, which we all bleed and understand individual cultures, but they're not wasting your time if they see something. So having the ability for them to just text message you simply, hey, there was a guest room that this didn't look so right. I just wanted to make you aware, and making sure that they understand that that's not a waste of your time or your security department's time either.
I think one of the most important things you can do as a GM is empower your team to come forward and to communicate. I said this yesterday in the No Room for Trafficking panel, that we have to communicate with each other. If you see something, if your housekeepers see something, they should feel comfortable enough to come to you as a boss and say something's not right. If you ever discourage that, shame on you. I did have a housekeeper tell me that they were afraid to come forward one time because their GM didn't want to rock the boat. So without saying exactly what I said that day, I sort of said, rock the boat. Rock the boat, do whatever you got to do, turn the boat over, but get that attention, because shame on them. And I say this all the time. Don't worry about being wrong. Don't worry about calling the cops and what if I'm wrong? What if you are wrong? What if you are right? So better to be wrong than silent. I always say that.
Absolutely. And it's empowerment, and then it's okay to be wrong. And you think about it in that if someone sees something and you don't say something and something happens, how you're going to feel. So you rather make that call, pass it on. Sometimes, you encourage people, you report it to law enforcement, call 911, whatever, and say, hey, out of the abundance of caution, I'm sharing this with you. And if it's wrong, that's okay. The fact that the employee felt comfortable coming forward is absolutely the most important piece.
Yeah, I actually think that in one of our recent safety and security committee meetings, one of the companies said that they actually recognize these behaviors at their team meetings and with their corporate members when someone has come forth, whether it resulted in, something bad being resolved or whatnot. They were applauding the fact that the employee was coming forward and taking that initiative. So go ahead, Sherri.
You got to have buy-in from your leadership. So your executive team, your bosses should also be on the same page as you, because I think leadership starts at the top. So if they buy into it and say, yes, foster that culture. I love the foster the culture of empowerment and communication. Then your people will be easier or will buy into that easier themselves.
You also have to think about, you might have one small little piece that you report, say, to local law enforcement. You don't know, but law enforcement might know that, hey, this same individual, 3 other hotels in that market, there's been issues. And all of a sudden, that one little piece that you bring to the table, they put it together with other incidents they've been involved in, and might become a much bigger situation simply because you shared that little piece that you weren't so sure about.
Ross, just on the property level, when these incidents are reported, what kind of backup should you be doing? What kind of reporting? What do you guys do to make sure that you're capturing that event so that you can then turn it over to law enforcement and you have a complete story to tell?
Yeah, absolutely. Timeliness is everything. So if you have an incident that occurs, let's say at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, obviously taking statements from those that are involved, obviously associate wide, as well as witness statements as well. So documenting factual information, ridding it of the drama that, obviously, comes with incidents like this, but really getting that factual timelines. If you have cameras in your buildings or have, the ability to look back at tape that's being recorded, is obviously capture that, set it aside, and obviously based on local jurisdictions, do what you can with that. But timeliness is everything. So making sure that if that incident occurs, you're not waiting till Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday go by before this email comes out that says, hey, does anyone know about the, incident that took place in 1, 2, 3, 4? It's getting your people to understand and feel that they're not going to be, what's the word, retaliation, if you will, for coming forth and saying, hey, I was a part of this and I have something to contribute to it. So detailed reports, factual, timeliness, all play into effect to it.
All right. I think that's really important to make sure you're documenting and that you're making sure that you create a safe culture for people to come forth. I think you guys are in agreement with that.
So, and just keep the personal side of it out. Document just the facts. Don't add opinions.
Or emotions or drama.
No drama llamas
We like to
here.
do that. We like to do that sometimes.
We're void of drama llamas. Okay, I don't know, Matt, all of you out there, but we have been talking about 2026. 2026 is going to have a lot of opportunity for the United States to be involved in big events. There's FIFA, there's America 250, there is midterm elections. And I know our Safety and Security Committee has been talking about being prepared for these large events. But it's really critical preparedness, whether it's a small event, you're having a wedding, or whether that you're having a union meeting or something like that. Let's talk about how hotels can be prepared for the everyday kind of events that are coming around, and then some of these big things that we know are on the horizon. Whoever wants to take it? Go ahead.
Well, I would say that you should always be prepared. So it should not be a surprise that we've got FIFA coming up and that if you've got the World Cup coming to your city, you should have already been prepared, because that's what you should be doing every day. So it shouldn't be a surprise. But with FIFA coming up, and especially in the area of human trafficking, this is a huge venue and a huge event where we know, because of past events, that this is when the traffickers really, do their thing. And so I think that if you're always prepared, you do your training, and training is big. In law enforcement, we fall back on our training. Repetition is huge. You have to completely do the training, not just that January when there's that core compliance training, but all the time. And with ESA, a lot of times what we'll do is the GMs will have quick hits. So in the morning, they'll go over what happened last night, what can we expect today, and hey, by the way, give me 2 indicators of human trafficking, something like that. Scenario-based training has proven to be very effective. And I think with the big ticket items coming up, this is something that we should be doing in general all across the industry.
I think if you're training your staff day in and day out with a safety and security mindset, some of these larger events go much smoother. We're talking earlier, how many people are familiar with the 10-5 rule, but train your staff walking through the hotel. There's someone coming near you. You don't know who they are or what they're up to. At 10 feet, you make eye contact. At 5 feet, you engage them. Hello, how are you? Do you need help finding something? If that is somebody that is up to no good in your hotel, the fact that you've interacted with them, they're probably going to leave and go somewhere else. And if they were just a regular customer, imagine, the hospitality by saying good morning to them or asking them if they need help locating something. I think when we train our staff on stuff like that day in and day out, that just helps and makes you that much more prepared for the larger events. Because the reality is, with the larger events, if something were to happen, that person's probably coming through your property before the big event anyway, looking at your hotel.
Yeah, and to add to that, we all know when these big events are going to take place, right? We have a date, we have a time, we have a range. So you have to work backwards from that. Just like, safety and security really is a muscle that needs to be exercised consistently. You're not going to go out and run a marathon tomorrow, right? It's going to take time for you to get critically acclaimed to getting comfortable and having the conversation. And listen, safety and security is at the creme de la creme, the pinnacle of what's important in a hotel or restaurant environment. It's not the sexiest of things. It's not being talked amongst, the Michelin stars and the cocktail programming and the special menu items or RevPAR and things of that nature. But if you don't talk about it, the consequences will far outweigh all of those other things in the long term. So you could have drastic issues in your hotel that would incorporate ownership having some really serious discussions, about, what happened or what took place and what was the preparation, what was the contingency. You think and you pray for Jamaica right now, that the hoteliers that are down there, I can't even imagine what they're going through. The staff is probably living in the hotel at this point. There's windows being blown out and there's flooding and all that stuff. You just hope and pray at that point that they've been working towards this for 6 months, knowing this is on the last, I want to say hurricane season. Anyone from the Southeast, hurricane season is like right on the tail end, right? So you think you made it all the way through season, and then at the 11th hour, if you weren't prepared, the consequences are dire. So the conversation needs to be brought to the table to your exec team, to your management team, to your hourlies, in weaving in what are the consequences of not doing this, because it's pretty stark, but it needs to be discussed. So.
Something else that comes up a lot, and it's hard to discuss, but I think we should talk about it today, is homelessness. And, often we will see folks in a dire situation, or maybe they are medically challenged and they're in our hotels. We have to talk about this. Can you guys talk about some ways that you address homelessness and things like that coming into your different properties?
I always remind my staff, and I shouldn't say our staff, there's a human element to this. We're in this industry because of people, right? And we have compassion. My mentor always told me, to be successful in this industry, you have to be able to deal with people when they're at their worst, hungry, tired, crisis, and to be able to find joy in being able to deal with people in those situations. It's become a chronic issue politically. It's polarizing depending on how you look at it. I think a lot of communities are doing a good job. Specifically, we learned a little bit about Denver and what they're doing. The community that I live in, we're making and exercising initiatives to help with that. But there's a compassion component too, and we know that there's paying guests in the hotel that can be, disturbed by this, and you really have to expect your staff to treat it, humility, but also just making sure too that there's processes in place that even from the law enforcement side, these are becoming kind of low priority calls, unfortunately, when you look at the grand scheme of things. So, if there's a robbery on the other side of town, I think we talked a little bit about this, or, a homeless issue in the hotel, the priority is probably going to go to the robbery. So you have to prepare your staff, to deal with these. And again, there's ordinances and there's jurisdictions and things about that, about what you can say and what you can't say. So I can't give you all the answers. But there's a human element that I always just remind the staff too, that 90% of the time this is a crisis for that individual. And so, you got to think through what the human element of being able to work them through that.
And I agree. And I think there's two components that we've got to remember. One is that a lot of the homelessness is connected to mental health issues. And mental health issues are huge in our society today. Many states have the 988 line, which was established by the Latino community to help people that were suffering from mental health crisis, because that would take the burden off 911. And so that is a burden for law enforcement. The other component, though, and it's hard to say, and I'll be as diplomatic as I can, is that we are running a business. So you have to be, very cognizant of the fact that this is a real issue. But homelessness, the guys coming into your hotel, or girls or whoever that are coming into the hotel, are also a liability for your paying guest. And so you have to make sure, again, going back to your brick and mortar, that you're maintaining your maintenance of your doors, that your doors are locked, that your security guard is there, or whatever. But we can't deny the fact that this is an epic problem in our society today. So I think it's incumbent upon each GM or each hotel or corporation or owner, or however you want to say it, to look at that as a issue and address it as it is best for that hotel and that area.
I think first of all, as Sherri alluded to, one of the biggest things first to do is make sure your doors lock properly. You can secure your hotel. Obviously, your front door is open, but even with all of that done, unfortunately, people piggyback in, they find their ways into our hotels. I think it's important that you reach out into your community. Does your municipality, your city have a homeless outreach program? Folks that can offer, that you can contact and say, we have a homeless person who needs assistance, where someone can actually come out and help that person, get them transitional housing or whatever the case may be. But engage with the community. There's resources out there to help those guests or those homeless people, so that they do not cause a disturbance for your guests.
Yeah, Ross, I think you even mentioned that you've had staff meetings where you've had professionals come in. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, piggybacking on Tim, there's in a lot of communities, there's resources for homeless outreach teams, hot teams, as we call them. There's the psych of it. There's the psychology of how to, handle individuals that are in these crisis moments. But if there's an opportunity to engage with your chamber, these hot teams to come in and speak with your staff about how to engage with them properly, what to do in these scenarios. Hey, if you see someone rummaging around the building or in your dumpsters every Tuesday at 4:00 before the trash truck comes in, engage these teams and have that individual, come out and speak to them and see if we can find them resources to get help. So.
Yeah, I think what we're all realizing is it's all back to relationships, right? And building the right relationships for the right scenario that you might have in your hotel, and also being on the forefront of that. We only have a little time left, so we've covered a lot, but I just want to reach out to all three of you and just, some final thoughts, tips, suggestions. Tim, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. I think it's important that, the topic of this, everyone's job, I think it's very important, because at the end of the day, security is customer satisfaction, guest satisfaction. And that is so critical today with the brands and grades and JD Powers and all the different surveys and metrics out there. So when we talk about this, it is everyone's job. But I think it's also very important when you're taking stuff back to your hotels, you're trying to get your staff to think like safety and security. Just be careful. Check your local regulations. Some states, Texas, California, for example, if you impersonate a security guard, you're not licensed in the state of Texas, it's a $4,000 fine and/or up to a year in jail. So you want to put this mindset in people for a safety security approach, but they're still a front desk clerk, still a housekeeper. They don't want to identify themselves as safety or security, if that makes sense.
Well, three things, if you don't mind, because a cop comes out in me. But the first thing is that, much of security is common sense. It's just really common sense. The number one deterrent to crime is lighting. So if you have a good, well-lit parking lot, that's probably going to be a deterrent to the bad guys. If you don't have a well-lit parking lot, your cameras are obsolete anyway, right? So think about that. Secondly is strength at your front desk. You have a very maybe 1 or 2 seconds to make a good impression. That front desk staff has to be strong, and that strength has to go through the entire staff, not just the GM. When the GM leaves, the AGM is not that strong. Everybody has to be strong and consistently strong. And then the third thing is relationships. I use this as an example. I was a patrol officer, and as a female patrol officer with a gun belt, there is nothing more sacred than a clean, secure bathroom. You don't think about that, but tell your police officers, if you want to come in and use a restroom that is secure, you don't have to worry about getting your gun belt stolen, and it's not at the 7-Eleven or whatever. You will not, I mean, you will be surprised how excited the female officers, especially because they just can't go anywhere, will take you up on that. And that goes back to relationships. The other relationship with law enforcement that's important is your code enforcement, because I always go back to what your outside looks like is very important. Law enforcement judges us by the outside of our hotels, and your inside is probably going to be just as bad or good as your outside. So your code enforcement officer that each police department or city has is super important. They can help you with your codes. They can come and look at some of the stuff if you want to. They can work with your maintenance people. But those are the three things that I would definitely want to leave you with.
Yeah, we talked in the committee just as a simple thing of making sure your bushes are trimmed in the right place, that you have the right lighting, as you mentioned, Sherri. Just those simple things. And you're saying that somebody from the local jurisdiction can come and help you do an assessment of that, right?
Well, it depends. I mean, your legal department will make that decision, but if they're SEPTED trained, so that they can come and do an assessment, or if you have a security officer, and which is what I do, is I can go and say, look, you might want to cut your landscaping or trim your bushes because you can't see the light. And again, you just have to use your common sense when you're looking at this. He had a very good point the other day, or this afternoon we were talking. Sadly, the first thing to go when all of our people decide that they need to cut the budgets is security and training. It's the first two things, right? Sadly, that is what happens. But if you think about the stuff that we can do, because each one of you as a GM are security officers. Now, we're not asking you to go out there and do anything, get yourself in trouble, but you have to have that mindset that this is my hotel, this is my domain, and I'm going to keep it safe.
Yeah, I just echo all of that, and expect the unexpected in today's world. Just always being prepared for something that's going to throw a curveball, and that comes from just relentless training and relentless conversations, contingency plans for as much as you can do, but also make it fun too. People enjoy role playing aspect. It's looking at modified fire drills. One of the best things that you can do is it's not pulling the alarm and lights and sirens every quarter or whatever it may be, but get your management team together and do a simple role play in a meeting room that says, hey, 4:25 this afternoon, fire alarm's going off. You as the front office manager, you as the executive housekeeper, you as the director of sales, what role are you playing? And really just exercise that muscle to have fun with it. And to the point when, where there's been a lot of conversation about AI, there's been a lot of conversation about shrinking margins in our industry. It's important that if you haven't started budgets at this point, which hopefully you all have, it's November, is having conversations with ownership of carving out a little bit of a safety and security budget. And that starts small with, maybe it's time to install a camera here, or it's upgrading these sort of locks, or looking at key programming. All of these steps can make a big difference. And it's hard sometimes as owners and operators to think that there's going to be an instant ROI on these things, but the ROI will pay itself in dividends over many, many years. When you think about lost keys and you think about lost footage and, items that end up getting, taken or misplaced. So
we've talked a lot about relationships. And if you're trying to figure out how to start a relationship with your local police department, couple weeks, it's Thanksgiving and Christmas right after that. Officers work all the holidays, just like our hotel employees. Spend a few bucks, deliver some food on Thanksgiving or Christmas with some business cards to your local police department. It'd be a great way to start a relationship.
I think I'll say this: police officers don't get thanked a lot, so they don't, and they love food. So I can tell you, they will appreciate you bringing some good warm meal and to say thank you.
And Sherri, one more time, that phone number was 988.
It's a 988. It is not every state has it. In fact, I don't know if anybody here is familiar with it, but state of New York is the only one I'm familiar with. You call 988, and it is a mobile. It's like a suicide hotline, actually, but it's a mobile crisis unit. They can come out and do an evaluation. I will tell you that is a huge part of law enforcement's issues is the mental health problems in our society, and we just don't know how to deal with it as a society as much as I think as well as we should.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
This is something that I hope you're going to take something back. If nothing else, feed your local police officers. No, but seriously, think at your hotel like you think at your home. You want to be safe, you want to be secure, you want the people around you to be safe and secure. And I want to thank my panelists today. It was a great discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.